and they come up to the top to be petted.
Isn't that something?
So these are animals that are individuals that have feelings. And they don't want to suffer and experience pain.
No.
And we're subjecting them to this horrible suffering and pain unnecessarily. And that's, I think the bottom line is it's not necessary.
Right.
Over the course of human history, there may have been times when we had to do certain things to survive. There have been times when people have had to eat animals to survive, perhaps. There have been times when people have eaten people to survive. There was that time when that plane went down in the Andes and people ate people.
Yeah.
So when you have to do something, you do what you have to do, I guess. But in this day and age, here in Burlington,
yes,
we do not need to eat animals.
No. We're too brilliant for that. Really,
we really should be. We really don't need to behave in ways that we've behaved in the past. As we learn and as we evolve as a species, and as there are certain threats that we're now facing in terms of population growth, in terms of scarce resources on the planet, unless we change, we're going to face some serious problems. I'm afraid. So, and that's becoming more and more apparent, and change is happening.
So I want to know then, when you rescued Hilda for the first time, maybe you could just share how maybe Farm Sanctuary got started.
Yeah, sure.
For what you were feeling, you were probably in your 20s then, early 20s.
I was in my early 20s, yeah.
And, kind of like hippie-ish maybe in a way, right?
I'm still hippie-ish.
And, just blazing on a trail because, guys, there was not farm sanctuaries out there. Like, Gene really was blazing a trail that really wasn't happening. And factory farming was still really kind of a dirty secret. It wasn't out there. People really didn't know what was happening behind those closed doors.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
So kind of tell us what you were thinking when you went to see Hilda and put her in the van and where you brought her to. And
well, when Farm Sanctuary started in 1986, there was very little awareness about factory farming, and I didn't really know that much about it. I had read about it and heard about it, but I wanted to see firsthand what was going on. So I started visiting farms and stockyards and slaughterhouses to document conditions. And one of the first places I spent a lot of time at was Lancaster Stockyards in Pennsylvania, largest stockyard east of Chicago.
Is it still around?
It is now gone.
Okay.
And,
good news. Yeah.
Yes. And so I started visiting and would routinely find living animals just left for dead who were too sick to walk. Like sick animals, dying animals littered the grounds.
On their property?
On their property. Okay. It's a series of pens and alleyways, and they have an auction ring. It's a place where animals are brought to be sold. It's a livestock market. So there were holding pens where they'd keep certain groups of animals, and they'd walk them through the alleyway into the auction ring. They'd sell them at the auction ring. Then they'd go out the other side through another series of alleyways into pens where they would be held until somebody would come pick them up and take them to slaughter or to another farm. But a lot of these animals were very sick, and they were traumatized by their transportation. They would pass out. They would become injured. They would become downed, and downed animals are those that are too sick even to stand and walk. And that was our primary concern, these downed animals who were left to suffer for hours or for days without food, without water, without veterinary care. And they'd just be left in these alleyways or in these pens.
And they'd be left to suffer until they died.
They'd be oftentimes left to suffer until they died, yes. And in the case of Hilda, she was thrown on the dead pile behind the stockyard. And this is where the animals that die or that are close to dead would be discarded. And as I approached this dead pile one day, I saw dead pigs, dead cows, dead sheep. Their maggots were so thick you could hear them buzzing as they were devouring these carcasses. One of them had one of the calves that was there had decayed to skeleton. And off of this pile, the sheep lifts her head. She's alive. And it was astounding that a living animal would be thrown in this dead pile. So took her off the dead pile, found a veterinarian to look at her, and as he started poking around, she started responding. We thought she'd have to be euthanized, but when she started responding, we thought she could live, and she did. She stood up, and she ended up living with us for more than 10 years.
Wow.
That was Hilda, our first rescued animal.
Isn't that something?
And since that time, we've rescued thousands of others, and we've taken living animals off of dead piles, living animals out of trash cans, and once they come to us, they just live out their lives. And it's a beautiful thing to see these animals recover from that sort of trauma and callousness and cruelty to become cherished members of our community at the sanctuary.
Right.
And they're our friends, not our food.
Right.
Farm Sanctuary is a place where vegan is normal. And it's a beautiful thing to see that kind of transformation for the animals. And as they are healed, in a sense, we also are healed. And
we feel it too.
Yeah,
we were there on the weekend. It was, hanging out with the pigs and the cows, and they're so gentle.
Yeah.
We were able to hug them and lay beside them, and it's an amazing experience.
Yeah.
Because I do think that they know when they're loved.
Absolutely, yeah.
And Susie, you've got some great staff.
Yes.
But Susie Costin.
Yes.
She's at the shelter. I guess she's the shelter
director, National Shelter Director. Yeah.
And she's the stories that she's talked for an hour. You can't get her to be quiet because she just so is inspired, loves the animals. Every animal's got a name and a personality and what they do, and they hang out together. And
she goes out and calls them in the pasture. They come running.
Yeah, they know her voice.
That's right, exactly. No, these animals are just like people see their cats and dogs. That's how we see these farm animals. And if they're treated with respect, they respond, and they become like your puppy.
Yeah.
Farm animals, like all animals, have feelings, they have emotions, they develop relationships, and they
have
respond.
Great intelligence too.
Oh, they're very smart, absolutely.
And pigs, if I'm not mistaken, just to interrupt for a second, have an intelligence of a 6-year-old.
Yes, there's different estimates, but that's one of them.
And chickens have, I think, a vocabulary of 30 to 35 words.
Yeah, that we've been able to figure out. I mean, it's possible they have more that we haven't been able to decipher.
They might even have more than what we have.
It's possible. It's possible.
And I think it's so narrow-minded for us to think that we can be the superior animal that allows us to dominate, right?
Yeah, and we are able to do certain things that other animals are not able to do, but other animals can do things that we are not able to do as well.
Exactly.
Certain animals can run very fast, and we can't run so fast, and have certain abilities to navigate. I mean, birds, it's incredible how they navigate. Fish, they go to spawn, they go out, range thousands of miles, and they come back to the exact same spot to spawn.
Yeah.
So it's pretty remarkable what the animals are capable of doing, and we're just starting to understand them. For many years, there's been a desire to separate ourselves from other animals. For example, the argument was that people are different than other animals because we use tools. And then Jane Goodall saw that the chimpanzees were using tools, and then that whole theory was out the window. And then, humans are different than other animals because we use language. And then now we're starting to understand that other animals communicate in different sorts of languages. So that doesn't distinguish us anymore. So the more we learn and the more the science delves into this, the more clear it is that we are not that different than other animals. And we're basically animals too. We're made out of flesh and bone and blood. We have the same types of senses, vision and hearing and feeling and taste and smelling. And we have similar emotional lives too, and develop relationships, and we live in social communities, and other animals live in social communities. And in the factory farming industry, it's, I would say, a pathological community, where the animals are there, confined in cages and crates where they can't move, living in their own filth. People who work in those places also, I would say, suffer in a sense, and are...
I think they absolutely do.
Yeah, can you imagine, in slaughterhouses, can you imagine what it would be like to, for 8 hours a day your job is to cut the throats of animals? I mean,
I can't imagine that.
And that's what these people do for a living, and that's just a brutal, violent, bloody job, and I wish nobody had to do it. Nobody does have to do it.
I don't think they do, and I think then that opens up a whole other issue to bring up, and is the labor within factory farming. And so many times it's illegal workers, migrant workers, not being paid properly, underage, because really it's really hard to hire people to take on that job.
Yes.
So it kind of brings up a whole other issue in itself, right? To protect even the workers, and those workers are scarred for life.
Yes.
They really are emotionally damaged for life to have to carry on that kind of job on a daily basis. I can't imagine waking up in the morning and be all happy to go into work and this is what I'm doing for a living, you know?
No, absolutely, it's brutal, and it's part of that whole attitude, though. It's one of callousness, cruelty, violence, and that type of thing becoming normalized.
Right.
And you know, we need to show another type of model, one that is compassionate, one that is healthy, one that is inviting and fun. I'm like, look at these cupcakes, man.
Cupcakes are fun.
They sure are. You know, so, you know, and show that living well and living in a way that's aligned with our values and is compassionate and is humane and is sustainable.
Right.
Isn't that hard?
No.
You know, and it's getting easier and easier.
I think that when we had talked earlier about, you know, we can talk about the doom and gloom of the factory farming industry, and you know, to know that there's 10 billion animals in the U.S. alone that are slaughtered. I mean, that's the United States of America alone on an annual basis for the United States to consume.
And those are land animals.
Those are land
fish.
Right.
You know, you triple that.
Yes.
You know,
it would be
it's a lot more billions. Yeah.
But you have to look at the positive side of it and pull the positive out. So something like like we are at Kindfood, we're showing people, hey, this is a really positive way to eat. This is a great way to eat, and not really explain the part of factory farming. We're showing the health benefits of it. We're showing how easy it is to eat. It's so healthy, but it's yummy, right? We're really delicious. It's good for you.
And you feel better physically.
You feel better. You're reducing coronary heart disease. You're reducing arthritis. You're eliminating type 2 diabetes, and sometimes even type 1 gets reduced too. ADD, autism, Alzheimer's, dementia, all sorts of things that go in with a plant-based diet, and to show people how to eat that way is a more positive route to take than to actually talk about, the negative side of it and promote that part of it, right? So we're trying to take the positive out and just show people how cool it is. It's a great way to eat, and I
the
think
other stuff is upsetting. The other stuff is upsetting, and people can become defensive too, because I think they don't feel very good about what they're doing, and it's sort of an uncomfortable thing to discuss.
Yeah, the wall comes up.
The wall comes up, yes. So I think showing the positives is a very good approach, and if people start eating more healthy food, then they're going to naturally start eating less unhealthy food.
Right.
And start putting good stuff on your plate, starts crowding out the bad stuff. And so I think focusing on the positive is a very good thing, and that's what we've done at Farm Sanctuary for years. There's a stockyard with thousands of animals being sold, and rather than dwelling in that misery and being defeated by it, we rescue Hilda or other individuals out of that, and we focus on them. We focus on what we can do and do as much as we can. And I think healthy plant-based food like you have here is wonderful.
And then Hilda ends up being a voice for the voiceless.
That's right. She becomes an ambassador, and she becomes a symbol and an example. And I think each person basically is an example, and we are social animals, us human beings, and we rub off on those around us. It just happens. So if we're eating in a way and living in a way that's not very healthy, that tends to rub off. Conversely, if we're eating in a way that is healthy and is joyful and we feel good about, that tends to rub off. And it can become contagious. And it's really nice when that happens.
It is really nice.